We're going to start with this first story here about the Houthi rebels. So if you are not aware, the United States apparently they're claiming that they killed 10 Houthi rebels in the Red Sea. So there has been a showdown happening in the Red Sea. The Houthi rebels, for those who are not aware, just a reminder, they are from Yemen, and they have actually been trying to prevent weapons coming from the United States and other countries going into Israel, right? And we have to remember what has happened with Yemen, a country that has been devastated by the attacks from Saudi Arabia. Those weapons were provided to Saudi Arabia from the United States government. So Yemen is really in despair. There are people starving in Yemen. And the last thing I think that they want to see is for that to happen to the Palestinian people of Gaza. So this is why they have intervened. Let's go ahead and get into this story again. The United States is claiming that they have killed 10 Houthi rebels. Let's get into this clip here from One.
Dr. Ian Ralby is a maritime security analyst with IR Consilium. Dr. Ralby is joining us live from Baltimore, Maryland. Doctor, thank you very much for making time for us, and welcome to We on Wild as One.
Thank you. I wish the circumstances were different.
Talk to us about India's mission to enhance surveillance in the Red Sea. Are there any risks involved with that mission? They say the aim is to protect the exclusive economic zone. Will India manage?
I think India has an incredibly competent navy, and I think it will do a tremendous job in helping protect global maritime commerce as well as the commerce destined for India. But there are risks. This is obviously an evolving situation with new emerging types of threats coming out of not only the Houthis, but as you said, Somali piracy, as well as the Iranian question regarding the recent attack on the Kem Pluto, which was just on the outer edge of India's exclusive economic zone. What we saw overnight was that the attack by the Houthis against the Maersk ship that you were just talking about involved not only firing at the ship, but ultimately firing at the aircraft that were trying to defend it, leading to what has been, I believe, the first confirmed kill of any of the combatants involved. So we are seeing an escalation both in terms of the hostility and the lethality of these attacks, and India is joining the fray at a very difficult time.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add here as well, let's not forget the United States government and the UK are also contemplating going to war with Yemen, as if that country has not seen enough disaster at the hands of the US government already.
Doctor, let's talk about the Red Sea Force and the whole new war at sea. Do you think the new frontier poses a new challenge for the US?
It does. It poses a new challenge for all of us. And one of the difficulties is that, as we said, this is an adaptive threat. We are seeing an escalation almost daily. As the Houthis have tasted global relevance, they're going to keep fighting for it. And so if the U.S. is able to, along with its partners, shoot down all the missiles and drones and other aircraft inbound for commercial shipping, the Houthis will find new ways to attack vessels. And they have many different weapons in their arsenal, both literally and metaphorically. They can find new ways of attacking shipping and continue to wreak havoc on global maritime commerce. They are going to continue to find ways to be relevant. And that is really what their focus is at this point. Unfortunately, this started as a protest regarding the Gaza-Israel situation, but it has evolved into something that is totally distinct at this point. And so we have to treat it as an inherent threat in and of itself.
Let's pause here for just a second, because there's something I want to mention as well. Notice how he's talking about the situation. He's saying we have to treat the Houthis as a threat. But the current ongoing threat is coming from the United States government. They're the ones that are supplying weapons to these countries to destroy other countries. Let's not forget again, the United States government actually supplied arms to Saudi Arabia for Saudi Arabia to then in turn use those weapons against the people in Yemen. And Yemen has been devastated ever since. But here they are speaking as though, well, the Houthis are the problem and they're attacking us. You are coming into their waters. This is their area. This is their domain. I want you to put yourself in their shoes. How would we feel if ships were coming from another country to attack the United States government? How would you feel about that? But the US, again, they want to be able to make this point that they have a right to be there and they have a right to send these weapons. The United States government has become complicit as part of a genocide. There's no easier way to say it. Sorry, but there just isn't. And the other neighboring countries, they expect those countries to just sit back and let it happen. It could be them next time. Who's to say that the US government isn't going to do this to them, isn't going to send weapons to another country or to Israel in the future to have Israel attack them? They're got to think about themselves here as well. This is their home. This is their domain. We don't really belong there.
How easy or difficult is it for the US to crush Houthi control over the Red Sea?
Well, unfortunately, the maritime space is large and it involves lots of different moving parts. And so the extent to which chaos can be wrought on the maritime domain is pretty simple. Somali pirates with low technology did it for years. It took a major effort in terms of coordination between shipping and navies in order to be able to abate that threat. And while that was abated for a number of years, it is resurging now. And we are also seeing this much more sophisticated, armed, state-backed effort to really attack shipping, not just go after financial gain through holding ships and individuals for ransom. And so the extent to which continued attacks and continued threats to global maritime commerce could be brought by not only the Houthis, but the Somalis, the Iranians and others is extreme. And so that's something for which every Navy on earth needs to be vigilant. But at the moment, it is clear that there is a desire to maintain this pace and escalate it as we go into the new year. And I think we're going to have a very difficult start to that year with regard to trying to protect our global economy.
Guys, pay attention to what he's saying here, okay? Pay attention to what this guy is saying. He is defending commerce. That's his main concern, not the Palestinians who are being killed. His main concern is commerce. This guy is up here defending capitalism. Forget about all those people that are being killed in Gaza. We got to protect commerce, damn it. This is exactly what he's doing. We got to protect our economy. We got to think about the financial ramifications here. This is what we really got to focus on. Focus on the money, people. Totally leaving out the fact that the Houthis are trying to prevent more casualties in Gaza. That is what they're fighting against. In other words, this dude sounds like a cop. Something I want you to think about. Look at what he's defending. Let's protect the money, financial interest. Let's protect commerce. Let's protect capitalism. That is exactly what he is doing. He doesn't care about those people that are being killed. The Houthis, on the other hand, said, I'm the captain now. Now, this comes about at a time, and I'm not sure if everyone has seen this because I know I've missed a couple of days here, but South Africa has actually stepped forward and they are willing to also stand up to the state of Israel. It's not just the Houthis. South Africa has come forward and they have filed a case of genocide against the state of Israel. Let's get into that story. I'm going to explain to you how all of this is connected. And I think that Israel actually may have a reason to be concerned. Let's get into this from Al Jazeera.
I'm joined now in the studio by Sultan Barakat, Professor of Public Policy at Hamad bin Khalifa University. Good to have you with us again, Sultan.
Thanks.
Let's just talk about the decision by the High Court. Are we now looking at a real collision between the legal fraternity and courts and the government?
Yes, I mean, it's a major setback, particularly for Netanyahu, because he's pushed really hard to try and introduce these changes in the legal system within Israel, whereby the Supreme Court more or less become less independent and under the thumb of the government. And of course, Israeli population citizens have rejected this, and there were all these waves of protests and so on. And I think it will make a qualitative difference to them. But for the Palestinians, it won't make a huge difference, because the Palestinians are still governed under emergency occupation laws that the justice brought by the Supreme Council does not really apply to them. I think it's just another setback for Netanyahu, and it will probably help increase the questioning within the Israeli society of what he's been up to, that this is not the only faulty decision that he's backed. This war is another one.
Do you think he'll put that on the
Pause here for just a second. Something that I want to add. So again, Israel actually has to appear before the ICJ to defend accusations of genocide from South Africa. Now, first of all, shout out to South Africa for keeping it real. This is actually something that if the US government wasn't in Israel's back pocket, they would have the balls to do this too, right? But they're not going to do that because they're in the back pocket of the state of Israel. So they actually do have to appear. And Netanyahu is basically, he reminds me of a mob boss. Like Netanyahu is a straight up gangster. Let's keep it real. Netanyahu doesn't think that the law applies to him or to the state of Israel. But this is moving forward.
the back burner while the war in Gaza takes priority at the moment, or do you think he'll bring it alongside it? Because if he does, the public themselves in Israel then have a problem of, you know, coming back out onto the streets again while they're still supporting the government on a war in Gaza.
I don't think they will be able to come up on the streets in the masses they did in the past, because as long as the status of war persists, which he has introduced, as we said maybe in the past, is the first time Israel declares war since 1973. They invaded Lebanon without declaring war. It was always special operations. But by declaring war, he has changed the whole mechanism. The governance is in the hand of the mini cabinet, and they don't really have to follow all the checks and balances that usually exist in the system. And he can suspend a lot of that protest against him until the war in Gaza is over, and he has, until he declares an end, a formal end to the war.
But it's certainly not ending in terms of the pressure that the government and, of course, Netanyahu face right now, because they have decided that they will attend the International Criminal Justice hearings, a petition by South Africa accusing Israel of genocide specifically on this issue of Gaza and the war on Gaza. They could
pause here for a second. Diana, to answer your question, what took so long to get the ICJ involved? So you have to invoke them. You have to actually invoke the ICJ. And so South Africa, this is actually something that Cornel West actually called for. He said the US government needs to invoke the genocide rule from the ICJ against the state of Israel. Of course, obviously, the US isn't going to do that, but South Africa did. And who else better to do this than South Africa? Because South Africa, obviously, they know what apartheid is. They know about oppression. They know about occupation. They have firsthand experience with this. And some are actually saying that the apartheid that's happening in Israel and what's happening to the Palestinian people is actually worse than what happened in South Africa. And to that point, I want to ask people, you need to ask yourself, why is it that the same politicians that can praise Nelson Mandela for fighting against apartheid in South Africa are not willing to speak up against the apartheid that's happening in the state of Israel? I'll answer that question for you. That's because if you follow the money, a lot of these politicians are in the back pocket of the state of Israel, whether it's through organizations like AIPAC or J Street. They have already decided to be loyal to another country. And let's look at it like this. Let's say you're actually on the side of Israel. Let's say that you are. Most people who watch the show are not, but let's say that you are. Okay. Do you think that it is fair for a United States politician to be loyal to another country, to a foreign entity? Because I don't. If you are a representative of this country, you are supposed to speak for and represent Americans. You're supposed to protect the people in this country. You're supposed to advocate for the people in this country. You are not supposed to go against the people in this country and advocate for another country, especially one that's an apartheid state. Let's continue.
Avoid not attending these hearings, could they?
No, first, as a member of the United Nations, and as we were saying before, they're very keen on being counted as a state. Addressing the court with respect is important for all states. And obviously, because South Africa approached under the Genocide Convention, of which Israel is a signature, one of the early signatories to the convention from August 1949, these two factors make it impossible for them to reject the court hearing as it happens. Now, I think the issue becomes on how they defend themselves and to what extent South Africa and a very important international community is going to support South Africa in building the case and the evidence, including the non-governmental agencies, UN agencies, all the people who've witnessed what was going on over the last 3 months.
How difficult is it going to be to prove the case? Because legal loopholes can always exist, can't they? Are there loopholes here that Israel can use?
I mean, there's the only loophole is the fact that it's been at war. It has the right to defend itself. They have done every possible measure to reduce casualties. That's what I think what the Israeli defense is going to be. But
so Israel will most likely try to defend itself at the ICJ by basically saying that they are at war, right? So they can say, well, these casualties have happened because it's war, which is what they've basically been saying all along. I sincerely hope that South Africa has enough evidence. I'm pretty sure that they do, but that they actually have video evidence of Israel implementing terror on the Palestinians in certain cases where it actually was not a part of this war. And I'm talking about video footage that a lot of us have seen on social media that has taken place in Gaza and in the West Bank that happened way before this war, how they have terrorized the Palestinian people, how they have chosen to try to starve the Palestinian people. The UN actually declared this to be a humanitarian crisis years ago. This is not new, but that is what Israel is going to try to do. They're going to try to defend themselves at the ICJ by saying that they are at war. I think that South Africa will be prepared for this, but you have to understand that South Africa is going to be fighting against an incredibly powerful state that is backed by US politicians. But according to The Hill, Netanyahu, of course, is rejecting claims of genocide. So listen to this. This is from The Hill. It says Netanyahu rejects claims accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. So this was New Year's Eve. Of course, he's going to reject him. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Sunday pushed back against claims that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza, calling such accusations false after South Africa filed a case against Israel at the UN's top court. So all I can say to that is that if I were South Africa, to please have the video footage of interviews with Netanyahu and also with other minister advisors from the state of Israel, where they have made statements that they don't want the Palestinian people there, where they have made statements about the greater Israel plan, which Netanyahu has done in front of the UN. I sincerely hope they have that evidence, because that proves that the plan was always to push the Palestinian people out. And there's something else I got to tell you about this that I never mentioned on the show, and it was brought to my attention the other day. Has anybody looked into other resources that Israel needs? And I'm talking about resources that actually help their economy. Because we've talked about the gas and oil along the Gaza coast, and that could be a reason why they want that land. But did you know that Israel also makes a huge profit from wine? Did you know that the grapes, apparently, this was reported 2021, the grapes apparently have not been doing so well in Israel? And if that is the case, then that means the plan is to take the land, to change the soil, to farm the land, to continue to profit by making wine. Look it up. I kid you not. Look it up. It goes on to say, I would like to say a word about South Africa's false accusation that Israel is committing genocide. No, South Africa, it is not we who have come to perpetrate genocide. It is Hamas. Okay, let's compare the number of casualties, right? First, they said it was 1,400 people that Hamas killed at the festival. They actually later on changed that number to 1,200 because apparently the IDF killed some of their own people. The IDF also killed 3 hostages that were waving a white flag. Again, their own people. Compare that to, what is it now, 25,000? That number will continue to increase because all of the bodies have not been found. 25,000 civilians that have been killed in Gaza. How can you say that it's the other way around? You can't unless you're a blatant liar. He goes on to say Hamas would kill us all if they could. Netanyahu's remarks were in response to South Africa launching a case at the UN's International Court of Justice last week that accuses Israel of carrying out genocide against the Palestinians in Gaza. Netanyahu argued that Israel's military is acting as morally as possible, that's BS, and doing everything to avoid harming civilians as it wages an offensive against Hamas in Gaza. But word on the street is that Netanyahu is actually a little bit concerned about this appearance. Now, when is this going to happen? This will happen next Thursday. Pay attention to this, guys, because this is coming up very soon. Israel goes on trial for the genocide it committed in Gaza. Israel will face accusations of genocide in the International Criminal Court, the ICC, which has scheduled a hearing next Thursday for South Africa's lawsuit accusing Israel of genocide in Gaza. Israel has confirmed that it will appear in the Netherlands next week to defend against the charges. And there he is right there. When we get into this next story, I just want you to remember that with all the fuss that Joe Biden and his administration and Democrats have in this country about the dangerous right wing in this country, I just want to remind you the U.S. government has no problem funding the right wing. They're doing it right now. They're funding Netanyahu. They're funding Israel. And I mentioned this earlier on Rising this morning as well. The United States government gives $3.8 billion to Israel every year. That was before the war started in October 7th. Giving them health care, giving them free college, the same things that they don't want to give you in this country. Now, no matter what side of the aisle you stand politically, I want you to think about this for a second. You may have been against Medicare for all. You may have said, I don't want the government in my life. Some of you feel that way. You may have been against free college. Some of you said it's not fair. I had to pay to go. I get it. I had to pay to go too. But how do you feel about the U.S. government sending billions of dollars to another country for those individuals to have those rights and to have those privileges, but they don't want to give them to you? Something to think about.